Okay. Well, it's now 6:01. We're going to get underway. Noting a couple of people aren't here yet, will hopefully join us as we go. So welcome to committee members, new and old, noting Janella and Chair Smith are both new to this committee following the triennial elections that have been. To those in the public gallery from the community, council staff members and a few other councillors that have come down, thank you for joining us. Those online watching, hopefully sound quality is where it needs to be. Agenda item 2 is apologies, and there is a few of them. Paul Madgwick, Kelly Malloy, Kim Smith is going to have Carl Luxon in his place. Owen Kilgore is going to have Wayne Costello in his place. James Cagle is going to have Mark Pinner in his place. And Ian Hartshorn is potentially going to join us online or is going to be late. And we currently have Logan online joining us. Someone to move and second those apologies. Helen looking for a seconder. Graham, thank you. All in favour? Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item 3, declaration of interests. Anything on the agenda today that triggers a conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest for anyone around the table? There being none, we will move past that. Public forum petitions and deputations. I haven't had anything, but is there anything from the gallery? No, we will jog on past that as well. Late items having been given none, we will jog on past that as well. Confirmation of minutes, agenda item 6. So there's 2 sets of minutes here to be approved. The first being the 12th of February 2025 ones, which were carried over from the last week based on a number of questions there. So I'll open that up to the floor for discussion to start with, and we'll move those and then move into those for 31 July 2025 as well. Are the updated changes to those from February 12, 2025 sufficient for those in the room to accept those this time?
Logan was wondering. You happy with those, Logan?
Oh, just put me down as no, rather than you want to move on, a long meeting.
Okay, so looking for someone to move the motion to confirm that the minutes of the Franz Josef Rating District Joint Committee meeting held on 12 February 2025 are true and correct. Looking for a seconder. I will do that if there's nobody else. All in favour? Those against, including Logan. Motion carries, noting Logan's opposition. So then we move into the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of July 2025. The motion is the same to look to those to be a true and correct record. Any commentary on those from anyone? Tough crowd. We have a mover and a seconder to accept those as a correct record if there's no commentary on them. It's another the head from Graham. Yep. Looking for a seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dale. All in favour? Any opposition? Happy with those ones, Logan?
Just move forward. You're busy. I won't say too much.
Oh, okay. Great. We will move into the next agenda item, which is the action list. There are 4 items on this. Up for discussion. Item number 1 being action 003. Financial update. Tom Hopkins, I have your name next to that if you'd like to speak to it.
Have that one down as being complete. Managed this one through the working group. Information that we've got right out in the public, and recall the previous meeting, we reported back to the committee on the financial status of the stage 1 project, and not swiftly, but committee was happy with the outcome of those discussions with the working group and the outcome of the project from the financial committee.
Cool. So that's noted as complete and can be removed from the list. Everyone happy with that?
I thought we are still waiting, Tom, aren't we, for the invoices and the variation from budget from the original one to the committee?
So there's a level of detail that's being asked for that we can't release publicly due to commercial sensitivity reasons, but we had a conversation with the working group, and please, working group members, help me out here if I've got this wrong. Where we explained the reasons for the variances in the project and the working group. My understanding is that you guys were happy with that.
That wasn't the action, Tom. The action was to come back to the committee with invoices. The specific action was very specific and it was agreed at the time, and you haven't come back to us with that as a committee. So you haven't actually completed the action as was agreed and minuted, or anything close to that action, to be fair.
Working group, can you help me out here, please?
Tom, the working group's not the committee. You said you'll come back to the committee. You've not provided the committee with that information. Don't look to others and duck your responsibilities. You committed to come back to it a long time ago with that information, the variances, and I'm in the committee and I've seen nothing. I don't think the committee's seen any of that information.
Yeah, Logan, we don't need to be talking about people ducking and objecting from their orders there. Tom, point of your response?
My response is that some of the information that has been asked for, we can't release due to commercial sensitivity reasons. We did discuss some of this information to a high level of detail with the working group who have signed a declaration of conflict of interest and confidentiality agreement. We got the confidence, as I understood it, of the working group, in which case we reported back at the last meeting on the financial position. The minutes record that the committee was happy with the financial position of the project. That's my response.
And that was my understanding of the setting up of the working group in the first place.
Thank you.
That wasn't the action, Tom. It comes back to the action. We haven't seen. Can we agreed action and you haven't completed the agreed action?
And he's told you why he can't.
But he said some of the information is confidential. The stuff that's not confidential, can you please share that? He said some of it's not confidential. There was no objection at the time of setting the action up. And it's only become an issue now where he said something's completed that hasn't been completed. Can he please commit to coming back to the committee with the information that's not confidential or at a more aggregated level, so it's not confidential, and share that information as he committed to some months ago, many months ago.
Sorry, Tom. Dale?
Logan, most of the financial information we've received would be, I would class as confidential. That from the working group point of view, I would say 90% of it will be confidential.
Yeah, at an aggregated level, we've got a massive variance from budget, and there's been no explanation made. Like I'd be quite concerned any project I were running that was that many $1 million over budget. There was a commitment made to come back with that information, and it hasn't been levelled, just aggregate it to a level.
Tom, anything further from you? Anything further from you? Anything from anyone else at the table on that? No other comments from members of the working group?
We've got a responsibility to ratepayers to make sure this money's spent wisely. It's gone massively over budget, and there's no one really being held to account for this.
We had no involvement with, and that's why we made the working group where we got our locals on board to help that sort that out. So when you sign that agreement, Logan, you can't bitch and moan about things because it's private clauses, and so you know, and that's why we safe lining in stage 2. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is.
Yeah, but we're still looking at stage 1 costs and trying to understand why those stage 1 costs went massively out of control.
Yeah.
And Tom committed to coming back with that information, and he hasn't come back with that information to the committee, and that's what the commitment was. I'm just asking Tom to do what he committed to do. I'm not asking him anything new.
And Logan, he said that he can't, and he's done it with the working group, and that's why it was set up in the first place. Colin Smith, comment?
Through the chair, I suggest, Chair, that Logan's comments be recorded and we move on.
Fair comment.
There's a clear conflict between the two parties. Can't be resolved here. We need to move on.
Yeah. Happy to do so. Action number 9, the timeline and scope of the Lower Waiho Farm River training works in respect to retrospective consents and concessions and reported to committee in due course. Tom Hopkins.
Okay, so to an extent, this action has been superseded by what we'll speak to in the project capital project update for stage 2, which is presenting a proposal to the committee to make a resolution on to extend the existing Milton and Others wall by 500 metres. So I'll come back to that one in the capital project report, if that's okay.
Thanks, Tom. Everyone happy with that? Cool. Action number 11, review and address the issues of properties not being rated correctly for flood protection rates. Colin Weeks.
Good evening. Just quick introduction. Colin Weeks recently joined the council as the corporate services manager. Thank you. Looking at this action here and looking at the response, that had a lot to do with the GIS portal, and that's really a bit of software that maps the proportion that falls within the rating districts, boundaries or class within the rating districts. And going back to the item, addressing it, so what we have done in the 25-26 rating year, so that's the current year we're in, we have taken that data and we have made corrections and we found errors in the different boundaries and rating districts. So we should see an improvement if previously we had issues across that area. Now, that's not to say we haven't. One of the areas that is concerning and being brought to my attention is that we may have properties that are not part of the data. Remembering that we receive our data from the TA and that needs to be included. So what I'm really reaching out to those here in the broader community, if you are aware of any property that we have not received a rates invoice for, and that will be both from my understanding from the West District Council as well as ourselves, and you get hold of us and it can rectify us. Simply put, we don't know what we don't know. So if we, through the chair, if I can put that request out to those here tonight. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Cool. We'll move into the fourth and final action list on the item. Action 21. West Coast Regional Council and the Western District Council jointly and urgently approach ministers with a request to utilise existing government funding for measures to allow time for the oxidation pond and wastewater plant to be relocated. Verbal report on to be given. Obviously, there's work in progress here. We have both CEOs and both the Mayor and the Chair of both organisations here to provide commentary around that. But both councils are hand in hand working through this process. Darryl, I'll throw to you firstly.
Yes, both the existing Mayor Helen, and previous to that, Chair Haddock, have had conversations with various ministers in Wellington about the situation with the ponds. Over the last few weeks, new Chair Smith and Mayor Helen and CEOs have been discussing this issue in a heightened way, and there is another discussion with Wellington officials booked in for next week on this matter. Thanks.
Anything to add, Colin?
No, pretty much.
Colin?
No, I think it's pretty well covered
Cool.
from our perspective.
Questions or comments from the table? Nothing there. We are looking at 4. The recommendation is to receive the report and information noted. Is there a mover and seconder for that?
Elections?
Yeah.
Yep, happy to move.
Looking for a seconder. Tough crowd, I guess that will be me. And all in favour? Any opposition? Motion carries. Chair's report, brief verbal report from myself. I just want to acknowledge the motion attached to this committee and the works being undertaken. Noting it's the first meeting of this committee for the new triennium, so welcoming Chair Smith and Councillor Munns to the table. Obviously, we feel well, Chair Haddock and Councillor Cummings, and I've changed from one coloured t-shirt to another coloured t-shirt. Noting construction progress on site on the works that we'll be talking about later on. So acknowledging the work done by council staff and contractors in that space. And obviously want to acknowledge work Tom and the community have done in the working group to date and will do going forward. And as I said earlier, on the action list, both councils are continuing to work together on this, and we'll do alongside the community and the 3 other members that sit on this working group committee. Looking for somebody to move and second that we accept my report. Graham. Thank you, Brian. All in favour? Any opposition? Motion carries. We move into the reports. 9.1, Franz Josef Stage 1 and 2 project updates, which I think we're getting a tag team from Tom and Scott on.
Good evening again, committee members. So Scott will provide you with some commentary about progress, and I'll speak to the financials. So over to you, Scott.
Thank you, Tom, and good evening, everyone. So particularly with regards to the projects, we've combined stages 1 and 2 for overall discussion. Where we've obviously seen in the past, obviously the practical completion for stage 1, with the remaining sort of physical works to be completed is the additional stormwater culvert, which has been instructed to MBD, but has been currently waiting their mobilisation to site, and obviously was around some of the weather components, which they are now looking to complete those works in May on completion of the Milton and Others Banks raise. There is a high-level summary just there. Last time we spoke, we were discussing the cost of the culvert through the link bank. We've managed to get that price down under the 100K mark there, and there are some small incidentals of upcoming costs in relation to the project closeout and engineered contract associated with that as well. We've also talked in the past with regards to the around the NZTA bank, and I know, Tom, you might speak to this in a little bit more detail, but around the return of the money from NZTA with a reduction in that scope for the NZTA bank. Did you want to speak to that now, or?
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. So what I'm going to do here is just provide a little bit more detail to what's in the report, and then I'll follow up with a email to committee members with what I'm about to speak to. Okay, so in summary, total project budget for Franz Stage 1 is 12.291 million. Our forecast cost at completion of the physical works is 11.02 million, which means an underspend of 1.26 million in the project budget. As Scott's alluded to, we do still have a couple of commitments that we need to account for on top of the physical works. The first one is the refund to NZTA, so that's 659,000. And then the next item is a contribution to the reimbursement to the previous rating district for the rock stockpile that was held here. So we used 3,000 tonne of that stockpile in the stage 1 project, and at the market rate that results in a cost of 148,000. So that brings the forecast underspend on project down to 457,000. Therefore, the rating district's loan balance is forecast to be 1.46 million against the budget of 1.9 million. Very clear on that? Okay. And I'll hand over to Scott to talk to you about stage 2.
Sorry, I'll just pause there. Anything from the table before we jump into statements? No, all yours, Scott.
Cool, thank you. With regards to stage 2, the rubbish dump, both stop banks, both the lined and unlined sections have been completed and practical completion has been achieved and issued to the contractor. We did investigate the raise of a crest level on the unlined section, and the engineers deemed that it provided sufficient freeboard in that location. With regards to the Milton and other stop bank, the tender was completed with MBD selected as the preferred contractor. That work has now commenced in terms of the vegetation removal. We had delayed that work whilst it was investigated to look at raising the Brata Knoll section, which we can sort of speak to towards the end, but there is an additional cost to do that particular part of the work. And we have an estimate for that. We've also provided an estimate with regards to a proposed extension downriver, the downstream end of Milton and Others Bank as well. In terms of other works that we've been looking at post the joint committee meeting last time, we were asked to investigate a set of options around the Havels Wall extension, noting the joint committee's position on it. However, we've sort of come up with a range of options there with a preferred option that would be around the 200-metre extension. And I know that there's been additional discussion on this with regards to between Westland District Council and West Coast Regional Council, which either I'll hand to either Tom or Daryl to speak to.
Okay, thanks. So thanks, Scott. So the Havels conversation, we've had that, we've addressed that in the actions. So again, I just want to provide you with a bit more further detail on the financial side of things for the stage 2 project. So just to refresh your memories, the contract value with Kānoa is 10 million, but joint committee and regional council have only approved 7.9 million of that. Our forecast cost at completion of the project, based on the agreed scope to date, is 4.55 million. So that's $3.35 million under budget. Yeah, included within that forecast cost at completion is an allowance for the 200-metre proposed 200-metre extension of Havels Wall, but we know that this committee and council haven't approved us proceeding with that piece of work. So if I take that out of the forecast for your rating district loan balance, the loan balance we're forecasting at completion of the project is 1.34 million against an approved budget for local share of 3.16. So effectively, we're forecasting to spend just half of what's been approved by the by joint committee and by council for that project. Okay. So as I said before, I will write all this down so it's all clear and concise, and I'll email it out after the meeting. Okay.
Questions or comments on that?
I do, through the chair, just Tom, it might just help as far as it's sitting up there, is that if the budget comes under the expected figures for the ratepayers, what is the expectation from Kānoa as far as the 60-40 breakdown of costs?
So this one works differently than the stage 1 project, where we were able to draw down in advance and spend government share first. The contract for the RIF fund projects is different, where we spend first and then get reimbursed. So there'll be no change in the funding split, irrespective of what our financial position is at the end of the project, unless we overspend, which I've just indicated to you, we're not going to overspend.
That's right, because I mean, not everybody out there is necessarily going to understand how this works.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could just really emphasise what Tom's saying there. We haven't drawn down the budget and then spending against the drawn down budget. We expend the money and then submit the claim as we go. And even if we're, as it's indicated, we're spending less than budget, the proportionality of the local share versus government subsidy is still the same as 60-40. Thank you.
And Tom, your forecast, you had the proposed extension of the Havel wall by 200 or is it 200 or 500 meters? You had that removed. You were not factoring that into those last lines.
In terms of the impact on the rating districts loan balance, that's correct.
And what about the proposed Rata Knoll height lift? Was that?
Those aren't included in the forecast.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll come to that as the next item for joint committee's consideration and then ultimately council's approval. Joint committee.
On that 1,340,000 local share, is that just for the stage 2 side, is it?
Correct. Yep.
So there'll be stage 1.
Correct. And just to refresh your memory, we're forecasting that to be 1.46 million.
Grant?
Oh, it's just a comment Scott made, sort of indicating that there was conversation happening between the two councils, and then there's a line here that suggests that there was a letter sent to the district council seeking contribution of 40% local share for proposed 200 metre extension. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And that for the
I'll take that one. So both councils are still in discussion around that matter. And both councils are looking at alternate funding sources. So we absolutely respect, and in fact, both councils supported the motion at the last meeting of the rating district down here not to meet the local share of an extension of Havel's Wall, albeit at 200 metres. So I respect that. Regional Council is still continuing to monitor the back cutting of the avulsion, and there's some indication on that papers tonight. It's still of significant concern, and we are looking at identifying other ways of funding the potential for buying some time to slow down that avulsion, given the threat to the ponds and other infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone else? Cool. Do you want to speak to what is the work for?
Thanks, Councillor Casson. So included in the papers, there are a couple of decisions that we're wanting to put to the joint committee for a recommendation to council. They both involve proposed increases in scope to the Milton and others bank section of Friends Stage 2. The first is a proposal to raise the Rata Knoll section by up to 900 millimetres at the downriver end to tie in to the crest level on the main bank. We've looked into that, developed concept, got a pretty firm cost estimate for it, which is in the region of 157,000. And that would mean at a 40% local share apportionment, an increase to expenditure for the rating district of $63,000. Okay, so that's one decision that we're asking for, and I'll hand that to the chair to put that to the committee when I've finished with the next one. Which is a proposal to extend the downriver end of Milton and Others Bank by 500 metres. This one stems back to, I believe, the original proposal for the upgrades to both the North and South Bank back in the late 2010s. It then came off the table, and we've been asked to put it back on the table by some community members. So our estimate of cost for that piece of work is in the vicinity of 2.4 million, and the local share for that would be 970,000. So happy to take any questions before Chair puts this one to a vote.
Just in simple terms, can you just very quickly speak to the reason why, just in summary, all reports and all assumptions understood, but, does it not seem that this Rata Knoll doesn't really need to be done? It's fit for purpose as it is.
So both sections of Milton and others currently meet the design flood level or the design level of service for the project. What we are hearing from some community members as far as the raise is concerned, and there's some validity to this, is when the river is running up against the Waiho Loop, it takes a hard left turn and then runs straight into the Rata Knoll section at a acute angle, and then boils up and gets quite close to overtopping. Okay, so that's why they brought that proposal for request to us and therefore to the committee for a decision.
And is that cost to do that? Is that just why all this works is going on? So to come back and do it at a later point would obviously scale up from there. Is that?
So as far as the proposal to raise the Rata Knoll section is concerned, the estimate you've been given is predicated on that work occurring at the same time as the work that we're about to get underway on upgrading the riprap and the tow rock on the Rata Knoll section. Does that answer your question?
That's helpful. And then just finally on recommendation 3, in light of the ongoing discussions though between the councils, we wouldn't be able to make a decision on that tonight, right? And the extension.
Unrelated, unrelated piece of stop bank.
Yeah.
One's on Troop on the north, one's on the south. Okay.
If they didn't do that now, Tom, they would lose the 60-40 funding, would they?
So the opportunity under the current project would be lost, and we'd be relying on a similar offer being made by government at some stage in the future.
Can we trust that though?
No.
Can we trust that though?
I can't make any comment.
A future.
So we'll be paying 100% if anything goes wrong.
But it is on the table now.
Time.
That offer's on the table.
Correct.
Tom, so just Tom, could you clarify, it's Logan here, so the reports, I know we might not agree with the reports, but if I understand the information pack we've got, it's saying that the water's not likely to be over against Rata Knoll for 20 years. It will stay in the Tartary mostly for the next 20 years. And also separately in the report, it talks about 10 years, and I appreciate we might not agree with this, 10 years from 2023, we'll start taking stop banks down. So we're proposing to put rock somewhere that we're not thinking there's going to be any water for 20 years, if the reports are right. And in 7 years' time, we're going to start taking these rocks down per the information pack we've been given, if that is right. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, if you go on our side and the south side, we only be there 8 years ago.
Yeah, but am I understanding the information? I appreciate the reality may be different, but is that what the information we've been given saying the water's not going to be there for 20 years and in 7 years' time we should be starting to take these down, if in the information pack? Is that the correct?
10 to 20 years, I think, Logan, is the report. So
Starting in the lower reaches and 10, working my way back. Anything else to add there, Tom?
Yeah, so you guys as committee and community members are well aware of the proposal in the future management strategy for the Waiho River, that after a 10-year period or thereabouts, we would be looking to retreat those stop banks on the south bank. However, we've now got the river on the other side, and we don't know how long it's going to stay there, but we think, we haven't modelled that just yet, but we think it could be anywhere between 10 to 20 years. So factually, Logan, you are correct. And these are matters that you will need to take into consideration in making your recommendation to council. To council as a committee. Thanks.
Anything else from anyone else?
Well, Logan's sort of stolen my thunder a wee bit. The Lands River Sea report that's got there doesn't incorrectly say 10 to 20 years that they expect it to be running into the Tartary. My point on adding to that, I guess, is that in 10, even if it's 10 years, you've got 10 years of gravel to bring it up before it heads back to the south. But that gravel goes through the Tartary and either into Lake Pratt or back into the Waiho. And already the Waiho is 1 metre higher on the tree right, the north side, than it is on the south side. So 10 years time, there's 20 metres difference between the middle of the Waiho and the Tartary now. So if you build that up 20 metres, it goes around the corner. Now you're 20 metres higher than the south side. So the addition of the bank, the Milton's Others Bank, is possibly ineffectual in either scenarios. And that's suggested by one of the reports anyways, which is because there's no water there now. Just pointing out what the reports say.
Comment on that, Darren?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Look, I think this is the right discussion. I think this has been characterised correctly, and hence the need for a debate at this table by the committee members. The only additional thing that I'd like to add is that the advice is predicated on the emulsion and the Waihos going down the Tartary and then, gradually filling up that and then being available to then move to the south once it is full. However, I just want to provide a little bit of caution to say that in a flood, a large flood, that we haven't seen, of like a 50 to 100 year magnitude type flood, there is always the possibility that the river may actually either bifurcate and develop a brae that goes down the south by itself, despite the fact that it's going down the Tartary now, or shift. So in a large flood, this is a very dynamic system, and there is no guarantee that what we're seeing at the moment might just change in that large flood as the bed moves around. But generally speaking, that is a lot lower probability because it will take a large flood to do that than the existing situation, which will go down the Tartary until it fills up and then it's available to come back south. So I just want to predicate that on normal times versus a very large flood event and then anything can happen. Thanks.
Any other commentary?
Can I just ask something through the chair? So it's all about the level of rights, the aggregation level, and we're saying it's at this rate, but every now and again it's been catching us out, rising that little bit quicker in different areas we didn't expect. So is there a risk that should that aggregation develop quicker on the northern side, that it's going to end up, if the south side is the lower side, water's going to run downhill? So, it's crystal ball stuff, but that still has got to be a risk, surely, because the gravel's got to go somewhere. And if it's leaning that way at the moment, do you see that there's a risk that could actually catch us out by rising to a level where it'll push the water back to the left earlier than what we're anticipating?
We're talking the Waiho here, and
I know.
Can't guarantee.
Can't guarantee a thing with it.
Yep. I can't quantify that level of risk. I mean, what we have seen with the emulsion is that has progressed, and I'll talk to this shortly, progressed faster than we've modelled and we've forecast previously. We haven't modelled how long we think it's going to take for the emulsion and the Tartary River bed to build up enough that the river wants to start flicking backwards and forwards. All I can give you is the advice that we've got, which is that may be in 10 to 20 years. That's all I can offer you.
No, there's no crystal ball, but it's just that worry that at some stage it could come back and bite us in the proverbials, isn't it?
And again, I'll just draw your attention to what Daryl had to say, that the report that I'll speak to in a minute speaks to the avulsion as being well incised now and unlikely for it to jump back out of there in the short to medium term. But there is that risk.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after a period of time, it will want to run back down through its main stem again, as it has done forever and a day.
Thank you, Tom.
So, Tom, the local share for building this bit of bank up is 67,000.
63,000.
True. Yeah. And like it
for the raise, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a low bit in the bank. The rest of the Milton wall's actually higher than that, isn't it?
So the Rata Knoll section meets the design level service at 1 in 100 plus a metre freeboard, in that it has 1.5 metres worth of freeboard over and above the design flood. Okay. The Milton section downriver has 3 metres worth of freeboard. So when you're looking at it, yes, it does look lower. So that's why the proposal is to 0 metres worth of raise at the upstream end, and then taper it up to tie into the existing fresh level meters. So things, which is about 900 meters at that end. Okay.
I think the main thing we have to remember is that when the river's hitting it directly, it's not going around it. So the water's actually hitting it hard and backing up. So there's been a couple of times when we're seeing a good flood, but it's actually, yeah, I'm glad it's not another 100, 200 mils of rain, because it would have gone over. Or it hits in direct angle rather than scope around like buildings.
Anything else from anyone else, Colin?
Just a question of Tom, if that modelling was done, and you were talking earlier about the level of the level of infill or the rate of infill was done, how much more certainty is that modelling going to give in terms of informing this discussion?
It's not going to give us 100% certainty. So what we've seen with the avulsion is the modelling that we've done has been consistent with what we've seen. Okay, so the model works. It's just that it has progressed a little bit faster when we're looking forward. It's progressed a little bit faster than what was modelled and forecast. Okay. I think it's a worthwhile investment, but it won't give you 100% certainty over that time frame it's going to take for the Tartary to come up to the point where it wants to move backwards and forwards across its fan again.
So does this committee think that information would assist the discussion for decisions made on these recommendations?
I'll just caution you there insofar as if you cast your minds back to the previous meeting where we had Matt Gardner present on this, that modelling work it takes a lot of computer power,
right?
And it's not a quick job. So it's a 5-week run to get 5 years worth of forecast. Okay, so if we extrapolate that to 10 to 20 years, we're not going to be able to turn that around to enable a quick decision for this.
What would the cost of that research be?
We've spent, again, can't give you a definitive answer on this, but we've spent around $50,000 on building that model and running it to forecast the development of the avulsion over the next 5 years. Okay, so it could be in the region of another 30,000, 40,000, but I am guessing, and I wouldn't want you to take that as gospel. Okay, it's time to come back to that. Yeah.
So half of what of our share of increasing the height of the Rata Knoll.
Conceivably, yeah, conceivably.
But that doesn't take into consideration the Milton and others extension.
Correct.
So that if you had to take that loan on, it's about 30 or 40,000 a year for just the interest payments. So it might be worthwhile.
Darren.
Yes, I too want to urge some caution about the speed and pace that we can actually do this modelling on. My contribution is that this modelling is done on the NIWA supercomputer. There is a lot of all on that supercomputer and an ability to book time in with that supercomputer with the amount of computational power that's required to resolve the mathematics of this is quite significant. And we could be waiting in line behind a whole lot of other calls on that supercomputer for some time. And so I don't think we can resolve this one, in a matter of weeks. Thanks.
And that Logan just commented online around the date for drawdowns. How long can we push this back? I think was the question.
So that's a good question.
Hang on, we're back up. You said Logan asked a good question.
I had anticipated that, not just from Logan. So our contract with Kānoa for tranche 1 expires on the 30th of June next year. But we do need to allow time in there for the defects liability period. Okay, so we really need to be making a decision on this quite soon. Through design, through consenting, because it will require consent for that extension, not for the lift. And then the physical works as well.
What I'm hearing is we don't have 6 months to wait for the next joint committee meeting. Thank you. Anything else from anyone else? Otherwise, we might move to the motions on these. Cool. I'm going to split it into 3 because I think that's going to make it far easier. The first is simply to receive the report. Move in a second to there. Bill. Graham. All in favour? Any opposition? That carries. The second being to endorse the proposal to proceed with a raise to the crest of the right and knoll section of the Milton and others stop bank at an estimated cost of $157,303 or a local share of $6,292.01. Yes, $62,921. Sorry. Was that you, Carl?
No, never said anything at this point.
Right. So looking for a mover or seconder to make that motion or an alternative to that motion. Graham. Will I beat you to it? Sorry, Dale. All in favour? We might have to show some hands or vocalise things. Please to support account. In opposition?
I oppose.
Logan?
No. I've got Ian Hartshorn on the phone dialing in via my computer. He's driving. Ian, are you a no or a yes?
I'm a no, thanks.
Can you hear that?
Yep. We'll take that. So 2 no's there.
Sorry.
I was a no.
Carl unfortunately doesn't have voting rights. He can attend in part. That is it can, but he can't vote in part of it, being an elected member or not.
True.
I think I was.
Proxy vote.
In the past, we've given voting rights to nominees. Grant voted for Kim before.
Grant is a member of the committee and could vote on Kim's behalf, but if Carl can't place the vote upon Kim's behalf, and if Kim hasn't proxied to somebody else, then we can't take it.
Was I not a co-chair committee member? I thought on this one.
Yeah.
That's not my understanding, Carl, but I'm happy to be tested on that. My understanding was Kim was elected to the committee through the process that went through with the 2 councils. Happy to be tested on that.
If you can, through the chair, I do think that when that appointment was made, it was recognised that Kim may not be able to attend all meetings. And I think that
was my understanding, yeah. Otherwise I would have got a proxy across.
It would have to go back to be checked.
I thought it was the people that could turn up. That's why we had 4 people from each side, and the people that had to be there to be voting.
That's true.
Which means we don't have one.
Through the chair, I think may be axiomatic anyway, because looking at the numbers, so
Important to get right for future though, I suspect. Anyway, that motion would carry with 3 or 4 against, versus the majority in favour. So that one will fly. Do you want your opposition noted?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, could we, I'm just noting the slight confusion around proxy and other things. We will pick this up in between, after this meeting on the email and just get an understanding out there, and maybe we can even vote on it via email or something like that, you know, or bring it to the next meeting. So we don't, if we want to improve our understanding here and have proxies, etc. Okay, so we won't forget this one. We'll look at the terms of reference and something to the next meeting. Thanks.
Yep. Cool. So we move to the next motion, being to endorse the proposal to proceed with a 500 metre extension of the Milton and Others stop bank at an estimated cost of 2.402 million, with a local share contribution of 970,000. For a mover and a seconder for that motion, or an alternative to that motion.
Is this not big enough to go to a community consultation? Sorry, I know I probably should have said it before. The size of it, we've not consulted on this. We've always consulted to the wider community on this sort of size projects before. It wasn't in the original scope, I don't believe.
Does that trigger the council's significant engagement?
Can I just ask Tom first to comment? Was work on Milton's in the scope of tranche 2?
The extension wasn't, no, which is why we're bringing it back to the committee for endorsement.
Okay.
Ultimately accountable for approval.
Yes. So look, I want to probably advise here that if this wasn't part of tranche 2 and consulted on as part of the special consultative process, which it seems that it was not, then what we need tonight is for this committee to either endorse that, to come back to the regional council for a decision, and at that point we would need to probably advise our council, the whole council, that we would need to go through a special consultative process, I think, on that, given the size of magnitude of the expenditure and the fact that it wasn't consulted on. Now, I realise that that's problematic, actually, so it's a good point, because you know, we're about to land our annual plan and we haven't got time to do that, and I'm noting the contractual time limit for expending this money. But I'm wondering whether that again might be a moot point if there isn't support at this table for advancing that work. Mr. Chairman.
Whether there's support or not, Logan has a valid point. It's a lot of money for, well, 8 locals and a few others to make a decision on.
Look, it's pretty hard to spend millions of dollars on something that may not even get wet for the next 10 years. As much as I feel for the farms down below Milton's bank, that they were promised something a few years ago that never got delivered. It's pretty hard to justify spending that sort of money on that may not even get used before it gets torn down, potentially. Maybe, who knows? It's my feeling.
Do you have comment about?
No, just merely to say that just supporting Darryl in terms of the fact that if it does become a consultation process, it will drag your timeframe out, which will affect your ability for the 60/40 split. That's all.
Yeah.
But we'll trigger it because it's annoying.
He put it to vote and see which way, and then if it has to do, then it's more work for council to do things. If it's a no.
But still, it's only 8 votes, or technically 8 votes from local ones. So
You've paid $100 before.
So it has been put to the table. I'm looking for a motion seconder or an alternative motion there to not endorse it. So looking for some support or not from around the table?
You move because you don't accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
No, it
alternative,
shouldn't be.
Yeah, I move we don't accept that proposal.
so an amended recommendation 3, not to endorse the proposal, blah, 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 as previously stated. From Dale, is there a seconder there? Grant, all in favour? I'll show of hands to make counting a bit easy.
Yep.
Line?
Yep. In favour.
In favour, like,
Any opposition? The amended motion carries.
Ian's in favour of not supporting it, same as
Cool.
me.
We'll call that unanimous. Agenda item 9.2, the Waihoga avulsions. Tom Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So since the last joint committee meeting, we've produced or commissioned 2 reports that summarise the progress of the avulsion since March last year, which has been the last LiDAR acquisition occurred, and then the geomorphic change detection analysis and reporting was completed. And this committee was spoken to about that at the last committee meeting. In October this year, we acquired through own staff and our own drone a smaller area of LiDAR data, just focusing on the avulsion itself. And I provided that report to this committee via email. And then in February, we've used Sentinel satellite imagery to further track the progress of the avulsion since October. Because it's satellite imagery and as opposed to LiDAR, it's just the lateral progress, not the vertical progress. So in summary, in October, we noted that the avulsion was continuing to widen and deepen and migrate to the east. The incision point of the avulsion has migrated quite rapidly upriver to between Canavan's Knob and the bottom end of Havel's Wall. The avulsion is well confined into its own channel and unlikely to jump back out and into the main stem of the river in the medium term, progressing faster than modelled and forecast, and therefore likely to start attacks downriver end of the Havel's Wall sooner than we had forecast. And that reflects the on-the-ground observations from the local community. Graham, I think you raised this one for us.
We just went down before and it's actually filled in quite a bit.
Okay, so I'll come back to that. The latest update, because that's just kind of one-dimensional, all it tells us is that it's moved a further up to 65 metres to the east, and that those movements seem to have correlated pretty well with the few flood events that we've had since October, November. We've just acquired a full resurvey of the riverbed in conjunction with the AFA program, so that covers everything up river of the State Highway Bridge right out to the sea. And over the next few weeks, we'll redo this full analysis, which will give us a new update that will verify what you're telling us there, Graham. So, okay. So happy to take any questions. Otherwise, take my report as read.
Questions or comments? If not, we're looking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation to receive the report. Helen, all in favour? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Agenda item 9.3, Lake Pratt enlargement. Chris Cameron.
Koto, committee members, Mr. Chair. I'm Chris Cameron, the Principal Natural Hazards Scientist at the Regional Council. Just to add, I guess in terms of the report recommendations that those noting recommendations, the final one talks about a similar report going to the Regional Council's Operations Committee. The only substantive differences really were to the table of FAQs, which is included in your version, and an additional photo on figure 2 of the size of Lake Pratt, the aerial view there. Otherwise, it's the same report that went to that Operations Committee meeting a couple of weeks back, and happy to take questions.
Thanks, Chris. Questions, comments? We'll move to the motions. Looking for a mover and a seconder based upon the following 4 recommendations. 1, to receive the report. 2, to note that council will continue to monitor the development of Lake Pratt with input from hydrological and geomorphological experts. 3, note that a communications plan has been developed to ensure that interested parties are kept informed of likely impacts from the growth of Lake Pratt. And 4, note that a similar update report was prepared for the council's being West Coast Regional Council's Operations Committee meeting held on 3 March 2025. Happy to move that from the chair. Somebody look to second that. Colin, all in favour? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. 9.4, thank you, Chris. 9.4, Franz Josef District Financial Statement for FY. Colin Weeks.
Thank you, Chair. Taking you through the financial report, I think the first thing that we should look at, the district is now joined. So although we've got the statements of the 2 previously separate areas, I wanted to really focus on the consolidated statements. And going forward into next reporting periods, I think a consolidated statement would probably tell a better story than having the 2 separate. In getting into a consolidated state, and I had a look at the minutes and notes from previous meetings, there was some areas where we have had done adjustments between the 2 rating districts. As a consolidated report, that washes out. So there's nothing external really between the 2 previously reported districts. So going straight to the consolidated statements, as you can see, I think what jumps out here, which is worth talking about, is that we've got a prior adjustment and that we've got a capital expenditure, and that relates back to prior periods, not just last year, previous years. We've gone through and we've jumped those through to get the consolidation correct. Coming back to I'll jump into the revenue, the expenditure, and then talk about the prudential reserve, and I'll go on to the loan account if we can follow that, do it that way. On the revenue, and the greatest one here is the rates. As I say, I'm new to the organisation, but where we've got a budget of $158,000 and we've achieved $157,000 in rates, I think that's pretty good budgeting and what we'd expect through rating. And if we go to the expense side, you'll see we under budget by a fair amount. And my understanding of that is the delivery of work and the time it's taken to deliver work has resulted in us having reduced costs. And that's what's doing that. Going on to the reserves, and I want to just go to the reserve as at 30th of June, this financial year last year. We had our closing balance of $275,000. So that's where we are on the reserves as of last year. If we turn over the page and we go into the loan summary, that we've shown both entities to give better narrative and a bit of or good transparency. But you'll see that we picked up the loan transfer and the movements between the reserve credit balance and the loan repayment, bringing the lower Waiho to $215,000 as a loan. And that takes the in account of those adjustments. If we have a look at Franz Josef, we've got two loans that have been raised. The first of all for the stage one, and we've spoken about that briefly in the previous agenda items. And then we've got the RIF funding coming through. Combined, those two for Franz Josef come to 1.043 million, resulting in a closing balance of 1,258 million. That's really the flow. I know when you first look at this, you understand the flows between, it's difficult to look at what you've got here, but to see it and look at it as a consolidated statement, and going forward, we simplify it by having it consolidated. Now, I know I'll have questions online, I imagine, but through the chair, happy to take any questions.
Any comments?
And those behind us, sorry, Jim, one back to you.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, just a comment, not really affecting us on the south side, but I believe there's still money owing to the north side of the ratepayers from their money they had in the bank at the time the two Great Districts were joined together. It's wondering what's happening with that.
Yes,
Taking far too long, I believe.
can't be fast enough on that.
Let's take a sip of water before that. I'll just taking up on your comment. It has taken a long time, and we acknowledge that, but we're putting in systems. I'll take you through those now to really accelerate that and get the refunds out to the affected parties. So I'm new here, so I'll give you a bit of a recap in my understanding, very, very briefly, and then what we're going to do over the next, or within this financial year, which we're looking at April, May, June, so really over the 3 months over here. So my understanding is in September 2020, Council looked at merging Franz Josef and the Lower Waiho. And at that point in time, the Franz Josef had a credit balance in the reserve, and there was a value or stockpile of rocks at the same time that was looked at as forming part of that transfer of costs and ready to capital movement. In May 22, Council resolved and quantified those amounts. So for the refund, excluding the rock, you were looking at $414,000, and that was a credit at that point in time. It's been verified. As of 30th of June 21, so this whole change and this whole marking of ownership, June 21 is a key date. So that's the date that the reserve was, as well as the valuation used in the calculation of apportioning the refund. If we have a look at the tonnage, the rock stockpile, we're looking at 5,300 tons at that point in time. And I've gone back through communication, and there's different communications at different times on how that rock should be valued for the purposes of the refund. So we need to be quite clear for the purposes of the refund. And one of the communications I picked up was the market value of $49.40, which was the highest value of market when you look at the averages. And the other costs that we had, and the average is actually lower than that. And with that, we've gone with that communication. And if I'm absolutely incorrect in that, I'd appreciate it. But what we're doing is giving the benefit of poor communication and the time it's taken. What we also did at a point in time is we've got legal advice. And from the legal advice, the premise they worked out that the expectation to provide the refund is a legitimate expectation that council acknowledge and stand by what was told going back to 2020, 2021. So there's no question in that. Where we stand today is that, and this isn't a reason or an excuse, but I've been with council for a short time, and from our chief executive, this was placed as a priority for me to get onto and help resolve it. And in doing that, my approach to this is that we're dealing with cash. And we need to make sure that our process is sharp and that we've actually put the right checks and balances as we've gone through it. So that meant going back to our data that was prepared. Let's go back to July, August last year, because I think that's the last communication that was sent out to the ratepayers. We took that data, we checked it, and that involved checking first of all the assessment numbers. We then matched that to the values and made sure that the values that we're using were correct to what we have on our record at that June 21, and made sure that that was correct. And in that, we found some properties that we added some properties to the total at that point, or the number of properties at that point, and there were 1 or 2 properties that we didn't have the evidence that formed part of this, part of the refund. And that's taken a very necessary step, but that takes time. The next step that we did, we went back to all the email trails and all the communications that you've had, and for each assessment number, we would have had a email going out, an email coming back with bank account numbers, and I think there's a third form of checking verification of that. So we've matched all that data now, making sure we're paying the right person. We still need to do a further step in that. In my proposal, and this is probably best practice, is that we'll send an email to the recipient, to the person receiving the money, telling them that we're going to call the person through email, and then have a time off, and then give you a call and actually over the telephone say, listen, this is, did you receive our email? Can we verify your bank account number? This is a bit of a tricky step because there are a lot of fraudsters out there at the moment. So we need to be quite clear that we identify each party and go through that step. So that's something that we need to do. Of our properties, we've got 111 properties we've identified. Of that, about half of those, we're at a point where we can actually go through the next step and then contact, check, and then make payment. We want to do it in tranches, so we want to do one-offs. And it needs to be managed in the sense that we've got to identify people who've had verified banks, we pay them. We've then got the next tranche of people who have their details, if their bank verification hasn't hit the mark. And then we'll have a group of properties or ratepayers that we're unable to locate. Now, we're hoping that's in the minimum, but that's something that, and to be clear, that money at that point will be put aside. There will be a liability on our balance sheet, and we will hold that. And at that point, we'll take advice on best to manage that going forward. And there's certain good guidelines and legislation surrounding holding other people. We will take the guidance. That's where we really are. What we need from you, and I should turn around like this. I also realise that this over here doesn't affect the whole of Franz Josef. It affects the subsections if I'm boring, but it's not quite relevant to you, and I apologise for that. But what I'm really saying is when you do receive our email, can we respond and keep that communication going and open? And then, in both of you want to take questions, really absolutely acknowledge that this has taken a long time. Since I've been with the council, this has been a priority. But what we do need to do is with fairly robust and legal way. So let's probably take a bit at this time. And I'm this supporter. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I just before we take any questions or comments on that, just acknowledge that the former Northside Rating District ratepayers have said, look, this is not really a matter for this joint committee to decide on. It's a matter for the former Northside ratepayers, and we respect that, but felt it was important, given we're here tonight, to give an update. But the second point I want to make for those properties that we're having difficulty finding the previous owners and details and things, we can't give out data on that to existing people that may track that down for us because of privacy reasons. So we'd breach privacy if we did that. But if I can turn that around to any Northside residents here tonight and say, look, if you know of previous neighbours that you're still in touch with that would be entitled to this and might have moved away or something like that, could you just tell them to get in touch with us and with Colin? That would help. Thank you.
Thank you. And just noting again that June 21 is the key date there. Anything else on that from anyone else? Logan, questions on any of the financial stuff?
Just to confirm, as at 30 June 2025, the current debt of all loans, the south side, everything, is 1,258,000. Is that correct? That's the south side loan included, all stage 1, all stage 2, all existing debt.
That's correct. I'm confirming that that's a consolidated debt for Franz Josef. That's what I've got in front of me, yes.
That's all, there's no other debt. That's the south side loan included, that's everything, correct?
Yes, I'm saying yes, and now that you've got me thinking, that is in front of me and that's what reported. Yes,
Beg your pardon, I missed that last comment.
I'm saying yes to the affirmative. Now, if you've got
It must be still.
Sorry, I missed it. It was a yes. The answer was yes. Is that correct? I missed it. Sorry. Yes.
No.
Yeah, it's got to be higher.
Still got stage 2 to come yet.
We're talking about to the 30th of June, 2025. Yes.
Yes.
Anything else from anyone else?
What sort of
just I'll check that. I'm confident sitting here today, but with the question being asked.
Logan, your mention seems pretty catchy. Have you got a question or?
What it comes into the main, it's relevant for later when we talk about the prudent reserve. What sort of interest rate are we paying on the debt? Ballpark, what rate are we paying? Is it fixed or non-fixed? And it is related to the prudent reserve discussion later.
So that could be between 4.5% and 6%. So that's a very competitive rate with the LGFA. So answering that question directly, I haven't got that information in front of me, but that would be the range.
Anything from anyone else at the table? Cool. Looking to the recommendations: 1, to receive the report; 2, to accept the consolidated financial accounts for the Franz Josef and Lower Waiho for year end 30 June 2025. Looking for a mover and a seconder there. I will move that. Is someone willing to second it?
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carries. The final item on the agenda, 9.5, the Franz Josef Rating District Annual Works Report for 2425.
Well, here I'll give a summary of the work that was done, 2425. Update on where things are this year, as opposed to what we're proposing here, plus a recommendation for the rate, for the maintenance work each year. And the 24-25 financial year, we had 37,400 on contractors work. There's 72,369 on additional expenditure, which included staff time, resource charges, consultants, and the rest of lifestyle and insurance. Which comes a total of $109,000, which is all in the financial report that we also had $75,000 in capital works that was done in 24-25. The operations umbrella for some to provide some quick protection work. There are a list of done on the lowest number topic. As for this year, so far this year we put some power poles up, which have now got camera wheels where we can monitor the avulsion and 2 different locations on the Waiho. We did about $4,000 there so far. If you're walking around the stoppings at the moment, you'll notice that there's very, very impressive too great everywhere, which is, not it's actually, very warm. And, wet summer that we've had, which will be urgently addressed between now and the end of the year. So I've got $30,000 sort of identified there through this vegetation management. We have some ongoing enforcement and compliance inspections that are done 4 times in the year. Funding for that. And there's $25,000 sitting there at the moment for I guess work that's not identified at the moment. Something comes up, so we use for that. If it's not used, that funding will go into the reserves. So it won't be lost to the rating district. We'll get up and increase the reserves. So at the start of this financial year, the reserve is $133,000. Keep in mind that the target for the scheme, $670,000, so we're well short of that at the moment. Looking forward into the 26-27 financial year. Had a really close look on how the best way for a scheme like this here to identify what maintenance requirements, what maintenance costs required. We looked around the country and industry-wise, to approach a maintenance budget as being 1% of your valuation or capital value is a very, very sound approach financing maintenance. In this case here, we looked at estimated that at the end of this financial year, so the 1st of July, each year, or this year, sorry, the capital value of the scheme of $14.1 million. So we're recommending that the maintenance rate for that, to make during the condition, is $141,000 a year. At this stage, a really important part is making sure that vegetation under control. I think again, if you wander around the stop banks now, we're starting to get a lot of potholes done in the form. We need to keep those under control before they get too big. So there's really ongoing maintenance work. We've been very fortunate that there's been no large events that come down. So the budget also allows for a bit of rock refurbishment when you lose rock in a large event. We haven't had those, so we're very fortunate up to now. The recommendation is that we look at maintenance allowance before $141,000. We've got resources and compliance costs, debt cost, $26,000. So we've got trained engineers to do their work, $35,000. A few rates of mice here. So the recommended rate take for the 26-27 financial year is the maintenance work, $235,000. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the table or online?
Others, I couldn't hear any of that.
You've got the agenda in front of you. The key point, I guess, amongst many others made was a recommendation for a total maintenance rate strike of $235,200.
It's a pretty significant increase. What was the reason compared to last year's increase, which was deemed enough at the time? Why now a 33% increase?
Fundamentally,
I think if you recall last year, the maintenance rate was kind of set artificially by a conversation on the table saying weight proposed is too much. We should give X. You know, the doctor at the time is what I'm attempting to do here is to bring the approach to a maintenance rate back to a formula that can be defendable. And that federal standard around the country at the moment are that a maintenance budget of 1% of the capital value is good practice.
Question. I know that we have had spreadsheets in the past and we've got loans coming online for stage 2 and the rest, but your 235,000 you're putting aside the maintenance eclipses the total revenue at the moment of 161 from rates. So just pointing it out, there's going to be a huge rate increase to cover all of this.
And I think everybody has to appreciate the fact that when you build your extra trips to maintain them, you know, if you go to buy a second car, you have to maintain it, additional cost.
I'm not arguing that, I'm just pointing out that whatever you think you're paying for rates right at the moment is going to be times 10 or something.
Yeah. And I suppose the other side of that is appreciating the fact that at the moment the scheme is actually well below the recommendation on credit reserve. Again, I mean, to maintain reasonably good weather conditions, really major storms or the damage, it's a really good time to start all those reserves up so you're close to the target.
If you can probably understand by the tone of the meeting about 10 minutes ago, people putting money aside for a rainy day is a wee bit frowned upon around here when it doesn't come back. So the reserves fund might just have to stay low for a while till we come up for air.
Again, keep in mind that the maintenance budget is based on an average. I mean, we're lucky lately we have some really good weather conditions.
Not arguing that, I'm just pointing out, you sort of jumped over to the other fund, which is not going to be accepted that well around the table. We're already paying for loans and now a higher cost for maintenance because we've got more banks, which is acceptable. But then if we've got to get more rates just to put aside just in case, then I think that's going to be one step too far for most ratepayers.
I agree. That's the bit that's tipping it.
I agree with Grant as well.
I agree too.
Ian agrees. With the south side of demonstrated, you don't need a prudent reserve. We'll fund it if we need to. The reality is there's not water against most of our assets. Most of our assets haven't actually got water anywhere near them at the moment. So, and most of our assets are very new. So we shouldn't need significant maintenance. I see last year we spent staff time near 40,000 and consultants near 40,000. Like, there's room to trim fat here. The building costs should be part of the stage 2 costs and capitalised. We're not doing a lot of maintenance work. Every time there's an avulsion or a flood, we don't need to spend money on consultants to remonitor the report. We know water flows downhill. We don't need. I know it's nice to have these reports, but there's a cost of living crisis out there. We've got a concern with a lot of our ratepayers are struggling to afford everything else. On top of this, there's the loan interest, and then there's all the other rates, all the other costs going up. That the council need to cut their cloth to fit the cost of living crisis that we're in.
So Wayne's made a recommendation. This is how it was dealt with last time. There was a counter recommendation which settled around the table, noting there's more infrastructure, so there's more maintenance to be done, there's more insurance to be paid, hence the costs have gone up. And obviously noting last year it was a discussion around this table to set a rate at a agreed dollar value, not a 1% of asset, hence the changes there. If someone's got a counter proposal they're willing to make, happy to hear it.
I'd propose we keep the rates the same as last year.
Yes, 100%.
Ian seconds that.
Mr. Chairman, I want to acknowledge that it's the right of this committee to make a recommendation back to the regional council about what rate we want to set for the year. So I understand that. But what I would urge, instead of just setting a number, is if you go back to Wayne's breakdown of what his recommendations make up his number, what is it in there that you do not want to fund? I think is a more prudent way of going about it. So for instance, Wayne has suggested that we need to do some vegetation spraying. So out of that list, what is it that you don't want to fund to get down to perhaps a level that you're prepared to accept as a final number? That would be helpful for staff. Thank you.
Point well made.
Okay.
I think it's the reserve fund we want out of there.
I agree.
Question through the chair, the resource consent compliance inspections. Is that at cost or is that being charged out at a commercial rate?
I'd have to defer to Theo. Those compliance inspections were part of a mediated environment court settlement, and I have to say it with Scenic Hotel Group. So that those costs come from that court settlement to get an independent engineer to independently assess the north side flood wall after certain trigger levels of floods. That is quite expensive to do, but we're absolutely obliged to do that, otherwise we'd be in breach of our resource consent. I personally hold the view that that came from a time when there was quite legitimately low trust between ratepayers and the Scenic Group with the regional council. I would like to think now that with competent engineering staff being on staff that we can do that and we don't have to incur the independent engineering costs and would save the scheme money. But I really only want to explore that on behalf of the whole rating district here tonight, if there is an indication from Scenic Group that they would be interested in working with us collaboratively to vary the consent in that direction. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that. Through the chair, thank you for clarifying that point.
How long is that consent going to run for? What's the time frame on that? How long are you going to be settled with this cost?
10, I think it's 10 or 15 years.
Specific from the result.
So many years now. How many years throughout it, Mr. Chair? How many years from that?
I'm going from memory here, I'm sorry. I'd need to check that.
Carl, without throwing you under the bus, have you got any comment there as on behalf of Scenic?
Oh no, we'd be very happy to leave that in place. I think you know, if you read the ruling, it was in there for very good reasons, for well beyond Scenic's protection. So no, that wouldn't be something that I think we'd be looking to alter at this point.
That's disappointing.
Noted.
Thanks.
If the landowners were prepared to do the vegetation control, would that be acceptable? Right?
That's a very good question, Andy. I guess when it comes to the Franz Josef, on the top end, can't get to the fine who's land the time. If you look at a bit of a problem these days with how do you handle individual people doing work for the architect council when it comes to health and safety, and what compliance requirements later is have to abide by. Better do that work the way it worked as a principle. So all knows about it is that's a very difficult one to try and work with.
So if we go back to the breakdown of the $235,200, we have $200 for haul hire for the space for the meetings, which is effectively non-negotiable. There's $1,000 for advertising and mail outs. There's $32,000 for insurance, $35,000 for engineers cost recovery, $26,000 for resource consent compliance inspections, all of which effectively we have no real control over. The $141,000 is the 1% of asset, is effectively the piece we can play with there. Does anyone have any comment around there, as opposed to a simple, let's just charge what we did last year?
I think you can also have some play around engineers cost recovery, that engineers are mostly down here for the stage 2 work. When was the last, we don't, and assets are new, why are we spending nearly $1,000 a week on engineers cost recovery? I can understand engineers are busy doing new assets, but the existing assets should be going through the maintenance fund. That seems a lot of money for that. We don't need all these consulting reports all the time for the evulsion, etc. I guess I agree with you on the 141,000. We're going to play with that. I think it's arbitrary, the 1%. An average isn't necessarily good practice. I think you're suggesting the average is 1%. That's not good practice. good practice would be as less as possible and be efficient. We just have to cut our cloth to fit. We can't just keep rating people because we've got the ability to rate. What do we really need to get money on? 30,000 for vegetation control, which seems a lot of money to drive along and spray both sides of the stop bank.
Through the chair, can I just ask Wayne, of the what would be your estimated maintenance cost for to undertake the necessary maintenance work to maintain the standards of the stock banks at present? Would that still be at 141, or would you estimate that at being a lesser sum?
That's a question of where it's really very, very dependable on what the weather conditions are like. What do I think would be the absolute minimum amount that we get away with? Cutting off, I would like to see that they've got below $100,000. And then that might even mean that if it was to happen, might have to be a bit of a discussion that necessary by the colour of the goods. The funding for the maintenance work.
Thanks, Wayne.
Can I just get a show of hands from people out there that we're a part of to find out if they're happy for an increase? Raise your hand if you think we should increase, or don't raise your hand if you think we should keep the same. So if you think we should increase the rates up to what they're saying, put your hand up. If not, then we've got an idea. No, I've got the hand up.
If I can, through the chair, what if regional council were to take this back and actually see what can be sharpened and what can't be, and look at it and bring it back?
The council are looking for this.
I know.
For that, Mr. Chairman, that's difficult for us because we need a decision tonight, because we strike the rate based on what's decided tonight and take that into our annual plan process with our auditors. So that's just not possible.
Okay, I'll move that we keep the same as last year, because the audience has pretty much shown that they aren't happy to go up. They're the ones that voted us on, so I'll move that.
Look, I would second that, and if we do have maintenance that is not finished in this year, then it will have to go to the next year. We just can't afford it at the moment.
Chair, that keep in mind that there's also seen compliance cost, the new cost of the thing that were not in budget last year.
Worst case, if you're telling us at the end of last year we had 275,000 in the bank. Worst case, we rate what it is, and if we spend more, there is still money in the bank. It's better being in ratepayers' pockets and them not being in overdraft than having a lot of money sitting in the bank. We don't know the future of the regional council at a national level. We can't get our prudent reserve back. We've been waiting 4 or 5 years, 6 years for that. So I don't think we need to be building a prudent reserve. We might as well be leaving the money with the ratepayers so they're not in overdraft. I support Graham and Kim's motion. Graham and Grant's motion, sorry.
Same here.
Ian supports that, Phil.
Can I just say that, look, if you stick at the same amount last year, even at a CPI increase, if you want the same amount of money going into maintenance, etc., you're looking at a 3% increase on last year, and that's really just the standstill. By going forward with last year's amount, you're actually going backwards. You've got an increased asset, you've got inflationary pressures, etc., etc. I know everybody's got pressure on themselves in terms of the cost of living, but I would just urge you to think very, very carefully. I mean, you're spending a lot of money on these assets. The local share is significant. If you invest in a house or a farm or a car or whatever, you want to maintain it, and you want to maintain it at the very minimum level possible. So by just sticking at the same amount last year, you're actually going backwards. And you've got an increased asset.
So Wayne, you were saying that the extra 26K we have to do for the resource consent compliance, that's an extra cost from that we haven't had to pay before. And everything else is in the same as the rating system last year.
I just would take it from. Also keep in mind, I mean, Colin just alluded to that. Is that, up until the assets, the construction of the assets, we reached reaching point. And as it has over the operations, the cost of those stopping, how they stopping in the construction stage, and the roof set with the contractor. It doesn't sit with the contractor anymore. Which is again, the transfer of asset value has gone from a construction stage with the contractor to operational stage with the full.
Any further comments on that before that motion goes to what's gone to the table before it goes to vote?
And just one other matter, I think that the committee needs to be clear on too. There is an obligation in terms, and correct me if I'm wrong, Wayne, there is an obligation in terms of ensuring that what you're paying for insurance actually does provide you with that surety that the insurer sees that you are prudently maintaining the stockings, or else the insurer will try and vitiate the insurance, which means you're then no longer able to attract the NEMA funding if there's a major event.
I'll go back on you that same Colin. There's enough talk about in the media about the effluent ponds down there, and shutting down Franz Josef because going to do that at Wellington and Canberra, you do whatever you want with their shit going out to sea. So why, if everything's up to standard, why are we getting helpers by ransom about the effluent ponds and that now? When we've got businesses coming to me saying that, we've got people going to the media and saying we're going to close down town, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Is that just scare tactics for government to give us money, or is that what regional council want to do?
Can I just say that's not for a regional council comment. The dock station ponds are not ours. That should be not directed at Colin.
But that was the media thing you said, though, Derek.
26 we're just talking about what the emulsion is doing and what the risks are. But in terms of what that means in terms of ponds and sewage and things, that's not the regional council business. Can I just, Mr. Chairman, make other comments?
Yeah.
Firstly, I just want to assure everyone that any engineer costs that are associated with the capital upgrades that are going on are capitalised, not part of the maintenance. So they're separate and not paid for at your maintenance rate. So just really assuring you of that, number one. Number two, the reason why the resource consent costs are hitting the budget this year is because that resource consent condition was only triggered once the engineering completion certificate on the Northern Bank was issued. And then that took effect, and that's why this is the first year that we can now budget for that, and we know what that cost is. So that's the answer there to that. The third issue is that Colin has talked about insurance and voiding the insurance. There is another matter that if we can't convince Audit New Zealand and their agent, who for us is Ernst Young, that we are maintaining the banks to the level of service that they were constructed to, then that brings into play the fact that we are not depreciating the banks, and they would ask us to depreciate them, which we're currently very legally not at the moment, and that depreciation becomes an operational maintenance expense that you'll have to meet. So, for instance, if we've got defects and liabilities on the banks that should be maintained through the maintenance rate, then that would actually bring into play a depreciation issue from the auditors. And right around New Zealand, they are paying more attention to this than they've ever done before, because the regional councils around New Zealand are claiming with the earth and flood banks that they're not depreciating them because they're made available. So I too would urge you some caution around curtailing the recommended spend on the maintenance elements of your budget going into the new year.
I think the argument from everyone is they're all new banks. Everything's we've been told going to last us 10, 20 years, so there should be no maintenance on it. So, yeah.
Sure. Cool.
For this year.
We've got a motion on the table to proceed with moved and seconded. Can we throw that to a vote, please? All in favour of the keeping it at, you said, last year's total? Yeah. Show of hands, please.
Keep it the same.
I'm keep it the same, keep it the same.
Yeah.
That looks like a majority that would fly. That motion carries. And those against, noting myself, didn't see votes cast here. Colin. An abstention from Andy and 2 against. We also have to move to receive that report. A mover and a seconder to do that. Yep. Helen, Dale, all in favour of that? Great. Being there no further business of the committee, I will call the meeting to a close at 7:47 PM. Thank you to those who joined, and thank you to those who have watched online and those who have joined in the gallery.
And just an FYI, 23rd of March is 10 years since we had the big flood that took out the Senate. It's the 18th today.
But,